There's never been a better time to have SiriusXM. With even more exclusive content, with over 150 channels in your vehicle, including the widest, deepest variety of music, ad-free. Root for your team. Get news. Listen to whatever makes you laugh. And hear all about your favorite stars. Your Platinum Plan offer includes more than ever before to enjoy online, on your phone, or at home. Create your own ad-free personalized stations powered by Pandora. Hear ad-free extra channels filled with music and enjoy favorite shows with SiriusXM Video. Thousands of hours of shows and performances on demand. What you love is on now.
So in the complex world of DSP, and sometimes very complicated, it's reassuring to know that a brand like Kicker has come up with an easy solution, not only for sound processing, but also for OEM integration. We've got Global Training Manager John Myers in the studio with us today. We're going to talk to you guys about a great solution called Key. From Kicker, this is CMA Workshops presented by SiriusXM. Kicker, and it starts now. What's going on, everybody, and welcome to another episode of CMA Workshops, where we show you, yes, you, the dealer, exactly how to do something so you can improve your game in the shop. Today, we're talking about key technologies from Kicker. And before we get too deep, let's go ahead and invite our guest. Representing Gemsen, who is their national exclusive distributor in Canada, is, of course, their national sales manager, Mr. Dave Singh. Hey, Dave, what's going on?
Ben, good to see you again.
Well, it's funny that we meet here because we're always talking about interesting stuff, and this month it's all about DSP. So when you first brought Kicker to my attention, I was kind of curious as to what was the angle, but obviously that became really apparent because sometimes, Dave, DSP doesn't have to be as complicated as dealers sometimes think it is.
You're 100% right. There is this misconception, I guess you could say, that DSP is time intensive. It requires hours of tuning and a lot of specialty equipment. And let's be honest, the ultimate goal with any audio system is to try to replicate, the original recording, or try to make it sound as natural or realistic as possible. When you go to see a concert, you're looking at the stage, you've got, the various musicians in different parts of the stage, bass player, could be on the left, drummer in the center, singer in the center, I should say. So, trying to replicate that type of experience, the sound stage, the imaging, and all that type of stuff, usually involves a lot of tuning, a lot of time, sometimes the ideal or perfect speaker replacement. And, it's a heavy investment. So when you have products like the Kicker Key Fit product and, the Kicker Key product come into play, where setting it up is so much simpler and it doesn't involve all those extra tools, doesn't involve you having to be an expert at tuning, and you can be done, very quickly, on budget, on time. This is a great product. Every dealer should be into it.
There's so many things that this checks off, and I think we're going to have the opportunity to really go through all those items. And I think by the end of this, dealers tuning in are going to really realize the type of solution this actually offers in real time. So in your words, Dave, why is it so important? If I'm a dealer, I've invested the time, you've got me, why is it so important that they pay close attention to today's presentation?
Well, DSP isn't the exception. It's going to become the norm, and it's really important for every dealer out there to learn how to use products. Ideally, we would love for every dealer to be experts at using RTAs and measurement tools and all that sort of thing. But, let's be honest, some dealers just may not be comfortable or at that level yet. But that doesn't mean they need to miss out. There are products that are available today, like the ones we're going to talk about, that allows them to get into the DSP game quickly and allows them to deliver excellent experiences to their customers, that's really going to knock their socks off. And it doesn't involve all of the hours of tuning and expensive tools to get in the game.
Well, let's get in the game. But before we do that, we have a video. If you haven't heard of Kicker Key products yet, I think this video is going to give you an idea of what we're about to experience. Let's go ahead and roll the tape. When we come back, we'll have John Myers in the studio with us. Well, without further ado, there he is, the man himself, Mr. John Myers, who's the Senior Global Trainer for Kicker. John, welcome again back to CMA.
Hey, thank you, and I've been called a lot worse by a lot worse people, so thanks for that.
let's get let's get straight to it. You know, the key group of products from Kicker is certainly unique. I'd like to hear in your words, John, what are the features that set this system apart and make it unique within the industry?
Well, all the key products are really designed, to really set the sound stage. I mean, literally set the sound stage for you very easily, very simply, and without a lot of test tools, without a lot of hassles. And it's something that, even a DIY guy, if he can read a manual and, follow a couple basic instructions, he can get that concert-like sound that he's looking for without a lot of, technical expertise.
Well, that's amazing, because I know there's two ends of the spectrum, right? You've got those super advanced tuners that like to geek out on crazy advanced systems, but then there's that,
and I love
group.
that too. So
yeah, we all do. But there was that point where we started, where we began, and where we began was a little bit of a sharp curve, and now you've come to the market with something that makes it that much easier to get into. Now, let's point out the obvious. This is a system that's going to help optimize sound in any vehicle situation, but it offers also an amazing OEM integration aspect as well.
Yeah, it sure does. I mean, we've got a great set of 3 products that we're going to talk about tonight. From just adding bass to really improving the sound stage to the OEM integration piece, which is going to set it up to flatline the response of the system to give you that ground zero starting point that you don't really have a chance to do with any other products.
Well, that's amazing. So we're covering a couple products. Do you mind giving us a quick overview before I hand the stage over to you of what we're going to learn?
Yep, we're going to learn about the Key 500.1, the subwoofer amplifier upgrade, the Key 200.4, which is the stage upgrade, and then the Key Lock, which is our smart line output converter, which we recommend anytime you keep a factory radio in place, which is very common with a lot of the vehicles out there. They're putting a lot of controls on the radio, they're integrating them into the dash and the computer, so you can't take that factory radio out. So if it's got DSP processing built into that, that's going to be counterproductive to the audio later, you got to go back and correct that. And that's what this Key Lock will do for you.
And that's amazing. And on that note, I'm going to use the phrase that if you think factory systems are giving you a flat signal from out of the gate, man, those days are done, like Axl Rose's voice. That's all I got to say about that. You know what I mean?
Which is so true. Sad but
true. Which is so true. And you know what? Real simple. 3 products to talk over. Guys, tune in. We've got the expert in the house, and we're going to hand them over so you can learn all about the new Kicker Key products.
Great. Well, I appreciate the intro, Ben. And here at Kicker, we've been doing DSP processing for, about 22 years. We started about 2000. One of the things we learned right away is, even back in 2000, DSP processing from an automaker was very important because they could take one basic radio, and one of the examples, when we were working with the Chrysler program, you could take a radio out of a Dodge Neon, put it in a Dodge Ram pickup, and it would change the equalization to basically make it sound the same for the different cabin, because every type of vehicle sounds differently inside. And that's one of the big advantages of DSP is you can alter the sound to fit the environment it's in. But if you change any part of that equation, the sound is not going to be the same. So if you merely take a set of stock speakers out of a car and put a set of aftermarket speakers in that are better, if you don't compensate for that signal, the signal that it's going to send the aftermarket speakers may make them sound worse than the stock speakers do. So we're really looking for one end goal. We're looking for, very specific, good center image. We're looking for, a fairly flat frequency response, but not ruler flat, because we all know those are really boring and not exciting. So it doesn't really matter what is happening, before that. We've got one goal that we're trying to reach, and that's what our products tackle and do very well. We're going to talk about, the easiest and most popular upgrade right now is just adding a subwoofer to any system. Now, it used to be really simple and easy. You grab a signal right out of the factory radio, you use a cheap line output converter, and, converts it from speaker level to RCA, and it goes into the amplifier, and you can amplify and just put a woofer on there. Well, anymore, the OEM makers are using DSP to take the bass response out of that audio signal. They do that because, if you've got a lot of bass response, that's harder on the speakers. It takes more power. And if you damage a speaker, now you've got a warranty recall, or you got a service call. So they really want to minimize that. So they're taking the bass response out of the speakers. Even if you have a factory subwoofer, they're not giving you the full frequency response. So what we've done is we've come up with a product, which is the Key 500.1, which is this little amplifier I'm going to hold up right here. This amplifier is designed to produce 500 watts of power or more into a 1 ohm load. It's designed to take any factory signal right into the RCA without using the line output converter, which can degrade the signal. They can actually be a fire hazard. Of course, it's more things to wire up. But this amplifier will accept up to 400 watts or 40 volts right into the RCA input. So there's no need for any specific adapter for this. But more specifically, with two different setup files that you download from kicker.com, and we're going to show you that in a little video here in just a second. This will go through and it'll compensate for up to a 12 dB per octave factory roll-off on the bass response, which is very common. I mean, almost every radio, whether it's got two channels, 4 channels, or 20 channels of output, they really take in consideration that bass response, and they really pull that back. Well, the whole point of adding a subwoofer is to get that bass response back. So this amplifier is going to restore that up to 12 dB per octave. And they usually put a little bump between 50 and 70 hertz to give it a little bit more mid-bass kick. Once again, we want to restore this back to a flat level and let you decide what it's going to sound like. So this amplifier's got some other really cool features. It does have a variable subsonic filter, so if you're going to use it for a ported enclosure or infinite baffle, it allows you to tune that from 10 to 40 hertz. It's got a low-pass crossover in the subwoofer output at 24 dB per octave at 40 to 150 hertz. And the really neat thing about this amplifier is the fact that, once you set it up and put it in the vehicle, you're going to have that bass response that you're looking for. It goes through and it adjusts the equalizer, it adjusts that bass roll-off, and now you've got that bass response restored to the way the original recording artist intended it to be. One of the other factors that we deal with today's vehicles, besides DSP, is something called start-stop. That's the vehicles that we pull up to a stoplight, they shut the engine off, and that's to help, emissions and help, fuel usage. The problem is when that starter engages, that's a really large current draw, and it can cause the voltage to actually sag low enough that it'll turn off most, aftermarket electronic equipment. The Key products are designed to work down to 6 volts. In fact, the Key 200.4 was the very first piece of aftermarket automotive electronics that was certified to still operate down at 6 volts. Now, let's set the record clear. That doesn't mean it's going to produce 500 watts at 6 volts, but it's not going to shut off, and it's not going to dip enough that it's going to be really noticeable. So that's really important to the end user. They want the proper sound, and they want to ensure that sound keeps playing, throughout the driving cycle of the vehicle. So great little product. It's not large at all. Once again, it plays down to 6 volts, and it's going to restore that signal that the automakers have changed to give you that bass response you're looking for, and that's the Key 500.1. Now, the first Key product we came up with is this piece right here, and this is the Key 200.4. Now, the Key 200.4 takes advantage of several different things in the vehicle. Now, we talked about, the vehicles have transfer function. So there's 3 different areas of equalization that you've got to compensate for. And this amplifier does that very cleanly, very effectively with just a microphone. So by playing pink noise through your factory radio with all the tones setting flat, this will go through and it will compensate for all 3 forms of equalization. It'll compensate for the DSP equalization that the factory radio has installed into their radio to compensate for their speakers. It'll actually compensate for the frequency response of the speakers, and this little guy will go in and it's going to compensate for the acoustics of the vehicle. So it compensates for factory DSP, the vehicle transfer function, and the frequency response to the speakers, because what we're looking for really is a flat frequency response. I don't care what goes on in the beginning. We just want it to sound a certain way. The other thing this amplifier does is it adjusts time alignment output level. We all know that if a speaker's louder, it's going to pull that image over that side. Well, if you got a speaker that's closer to you, like here in the US, the speakers are on the left side more than likely. Those speakers are closer to us and gives us two issues we got to deal with. One is output level. If it's closer, it's going to be louder. That's going to pull your sound stage to the left. Also, the sound from that speaker is going to come at you sooner than the sound from the speaker farther away. So this amplifier will go and adjust all three different levels. It'll adjust all three equalizations independently in all four channels. It's got 40 bands of equalization adjustment. It has output level adjustment for all four channels, and it has time alignment adjustment for all four channels. So that really takes whatever you have. I mean, you can hook this amplifier up between a factory radio and factory speakers, and it's going to maximize their performance. Or you can go ahead and take this radio or this amplifier and hook it up between a factory radio and an aftermarket amplifier, or an aftermarket radio and an aftermarket amplifier. There really is no, end to what this little amplifier will do. Now, this amplifier also has got something else really cool and exciting. It's got something called a biamp mode, where it will allow you to actively cross over tweeters and mid-ranges in a biamp setup. So with the set of components, you can take those passive crossovers and just throw them out the window and allow this amplifier to automatically cross them over. Now, if you're using a standard component set, you're going to have a high pass crossover at 3.2K at 24 dB per octave and a low pass at 3.2K at 24 dB per octave. When it goes through with its setup process, if you've got a larger speaker in the dash, like a 2 3/4, a 3.5, a 4-inch, 5 1/4, whatever it happens to be, if it detects a larger speaker, what that's going to do is going to tell this amplifier, hey, I can bring more of that sound stage up on top of the dash rather than just the ultra high frequencies. So it automatically changes that crossover point to 320 hertz high pass and 640 hertz low pass at 24 dB per octave. That brings all that sound stage up on top of the dash and really makes this thing really shine. Now, the setup process on both of these products, on both these amplifiers, is very easy. I'm going to go ahead and have Ernie go ahead and play the first video, which is going to be the setup on the 500.1, because that's going to tell you where you get your test tones for the 500.1, the 200.4, and the key lock. So Ernie, if you go ahead and roll that video on the setup on the 500, we're going to show you how simple and easy it really is to set the 500 up to restore all your factory bass response.
So now that we have the amplifier all wired up beneath the seat, before we mount it, we're going to go ahead and run the auto setup process for the DSP built into the Key 500.1. This is where the magic happens. So in order to start the auto setup process, we need to make sure gain is set properly first, and that's part of the setup. And we're going to use some test tones that we have available on kicker.com. So if you go to kicker.com, you're going to download the test tones. Underneath the support tab, there's a tab called what else but test tones. So go under Key 500.1, download the gain match track, as well as the 500.1 sweep track. Save them to a USB flash drive or maybe burn them to a CD that you can play through your source unit. You're going to play them through your source unit at about 3/4 volume or just before clipping level on the head unit. Make sure all your tone controls on the head unit are set flat. So bass, treble, bass boost, loudness, any type of sound shaping features, make sure those are set flat before you start. But in order to get started, we're going to go ahead and press the key button for 3 seconds. It's going to gain match LED. Once you see the gain match LED start, you're going to go ahead and let go of the key button, and then you're going to increase gain until the gain LED starts lighting up again, and then back gain down a little bit until it goes out. Once gain is set correctly, now you can do the auto EQ portion of it. So you're going to use the other track called Key 501 Sweep. In order to get the amplifier to go into that mode, you're going to press and hold it, but you're going to continue to hold it even after this gain match LED flashes for the first time. So the first set of flashes is for the gain match section. The second set of flashes is going to be for the DSP setup or the sweep setup. So go ahead and hold it for about 5 to 6 seconds, and then you'll be able to get into the auto setup portion of the DSP. The LED will stop blinking and go dark while it's calculating, and you'll see it rapid flashes after about 20-30 seconds to let you know the calculations are complete. And that's it. We're all done. Go ahead and set your crossovers appropriately, bolt the amp down, and we're good to go.
So we've now hooked up the RTA to the output of the Key 500.1. This is its response without the Key's DSP equalization engaged. If you notice 25 hertz, which is pretty deep bass, it's averaged about negative 47 dB in output. What's really cool is the Key has an on and off button for the DSP circuitry, so you can see and hear the difference this amplifier really makes. When we engage the Key circuitry, you watch this bass frequency increase. And if you look at the scale, we now notice it's got minus 34 dB of output. So it's gained about 12 dB more output at 25 hertz. And if you know anything about output in dB, that's a ton more bass. The guitar is going to sound fantastic. So as you can see from that video, it's very simple and easy to set these products up to perform to their maximum potential. We all know we have got tools in the shop that we need, screw guns, drills, wire crimpers. And there's a lot of shops out there that have some good test equipment. But, in the years I've been doing this, very few shops have an oscilloscope, which is what you really need to use to detect clipping, unless you've got an amplifier like the Key products where the LED will tell you when you get to the clipping. So that makes setup very easy. But you've got to follow the setup process exactly the way it's written out in the manual, and you have to do it in order. One of the big key areas with DSP that people need to consider is the fact that you cannot have a clip signal going into any DSP product, and that's why that clipping indicator on the 500 is so important. If you get a clipped signal into a DSP, it really doesn't know how to react to that, and you're not going to get a satisfactory result. So the other problem with just using an oscilloscope, generally with an oscilloscope, you're testing with one frequency only. Well, you might have a radio that clips at 80 hertz, but doesn't clip at 50 hertz at the same point. Therefore, if you only use one frequency, you're not going to get an accurate clipping indicator. That's why our test tones, when we set this up, does a full bandwidth sweep from 20 to 20K to make sure nowhere within that bandwidth does the signal coming into the Key product clip. So that makes that really exciting. In fact, the Key 200.4, this guy here has got something else that's also exciting that's built into it. And we start talking about clipping, and that's actually a compression circuit that limits output clipping distortion to 10%. That way, if you've got, someone that's a little heavier on the volume control, so to speak, they're not going to be launching speakers left and right. And this amplifier also is set up, but it's done a little different way. The Key 500.1 does all its setup electrically, where the Key 200.4 does it all acoustically, and it's done with a microphone. Now, once again, this requires you to download a paint noise file, and all those are available, as you saw, on kicker.com. And this amplifier is very, very easy to set up a soundstage. It sets up time alignment, it sets up output level, and equalization adjustment on all 4 channels independently, even when it's in biamp mode. And it's got a built-in high-pass crossover, 60, 80, or 120 hertz, which you can enable if you're going to run it with a subwoofer amplifier, such as the 500.1. So Ernie, why don't you go ahead and roll the next video, which is the setup process on the 200.4. And this is really exciting, and this really makes a huge difference. It will be much easier to set the dip switches with the amplifier out of the vehicle before it's mounted. The first switch is turn on mode. Select 12 volts if you're using an RCA level input from an aftermarket head unit and a separate 12 volt turn on lead. On this vehicle, we are using speaker level input, so we will select it to DC offset mode. The second switch is the fader switch. We want to set it off so it will send signal to all 4 channels with a 2-channel left and right input. The third switch is a compressor that will limit distortion. We will leave it off for now. If the compressor circuit is engaged, these indicators will illuminate when the Key's output is being reduced. The fourth switch is biamp mode. We want to make sure we have it turned on because we are bi-amping the front speakers only in this vehicle. If we are running 4-channel mode with front and rear speakers, we would want to select it to off. Next, we have the kicker EQ switch. Leave it engaged if you want a subtle bass and treble boost. For now, we will leave it engaged. The next switch is the time delay mode built into the key. If the car has factory time delay, you may want to defeat the key's time delay for better center image. The last 2 switches control the high-pass crossover. They can be set to 60, 80, or 120 Hz at 24 dB per octave if you wish. Next up is the radio detect button. If you have a modern factory smart radio and you're using the speaker level outputs to send signal to the key, you may need to engage the switch to prevent your factory radio from shutting down or throwing a trouble code. After the setup is complete, the gains can be adjusted for both amp 1 and 2 independently. The key is completely hooked up and we've turned it on to verify that all 4 speakers that are connected to the key are functioning properly. The plug to the rear speakers has been disconnected because we only want to play the speakers that are running through the key for the setup procedure. Now we'll take the microphone that's included with the key and the rubber strap. We're going to place it on top of the driver's headrest as facing vertical as possible to set up the tuning process. Everything's all set up. The radio is now powered up. Paint noise is loaded. All we need to do next is make sure we're in a quiet environment. All the windows are shut in the vehicle. No air conditioning's running anywhere. No outside noises. We're going to push the startup button once I turn on the paint noise to a moderate level. And when I start hear beeps, I'll have 10 seconds to shut the door and let it go through a setup process. So let's go. You just heard the happy tones. That means everything worked great. Now all we need to do is push the setup button one more time. That takes it out of the setup mode. Paint noise begins to play once again, telling me everything is tuned. Now all we need to do is unplug the microphone, jump in and enjoy. See you on the road. So as you can see, it's pretty simple. Now, if you don't get those happy tones like you heard in the video, if you get the descending, the da-da-da-da-da, that's telling you there's a problem. This key 200.4 is so smart, it's going to tell you exactly what was wrong in the setup. There's 6 different codes it's going to give you. It'll beep in a sequence, so 1 beep in a sequence, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6. And that will tell you what the problem was, what you need to do to basically set it up correctly. It will tell you if the signal is not loud enough, if a speaker's not connected, if you have too much ambient noise, if it doesn't hear pink noise, and if you set the bi-amp switch in the wrong position. So you really can't screw the setup of this amplifier up too bad. Now, it is fully automatic in the setup and the tuning. That doesn't mean there aren't some things you can do to basically adjust the sound. You can play with the microphone placement either forward, backward, up, down, left, or right, and you can go through that setup process once again. So you can do a little bit of tuning on that to kind of move that image exactly where you want it, because we all have our own ideas where we want that center stage to be. The other thing you can do, if you don't have quite enough high frequencies after it goes through its tuning, you can actually lay like a microfiber cloth on top of the microphone doubled up, and that's going to limit some of the high frequencies that get to the microphone. Therefore, it's going to boost those just a little bit more. So just a couple little tuning tricks that you can use with this amplifier to really dial it in. Now, once you have that all dialed in, you've got it hooked up with the 500.1. Since the 500.1 is designed to be used with a factory radio, factory radios don't have subwoofer level control, so you can always add the optional bass control to the 500.1. So after you get that all done, all you really need to do is go out and enjoy your music. It makes the setup very simple, very easy. There's no special tools needed, just a couple files that you need to download off the internet. Now, that takes us to our third and final key product, and that is the key lock, or what we call the smart line output converter. So what the key lock is going to do, it does something very similar to what the other products do, but it does it in a lot more detail. Now, the key lock will go through and adjust the frequency response from 20 to 20K plus or minus 18 dB at 1/10 of a dB increments. And When we're talking about equalization, you've seen 5-band equalizers, you've seen 10-band, there's 31-band equalizers, which are the most common. This has an infinite number of bands of frequencies it corrects. So it's not locked just to, say a 63, 125, 250, 500 hertz. It will adjust every frequency independently to make sure it gets the flattest frequency response possible. It will also adjust the output level from the left and right channel to make sure they are perfectly matched, because they may not match the output levels from the factory. The other really cool thing about this is it goes through and it adjusts for all pass filters and time alignment, whereas the Key 200.4 cannot go back and basically defeat the factory timeline. This piece actually can. So it'll go through, and whatever channel it detects time alignment, it will add that back in to zero out the time alignment, so you have a zero playing field to start from. Also with this piece, this is the only piece of aftermarket car audio product available right now that will detect and correct all pass filters. Now, all pass filters are used in most of the higher end factory audio systems to give more of a two-seat stage, to kind of bring that center channel in a little closer to the middle for the listener on the passenger side of the vehicle. Unfortunately, it's got to take that away from the driver's side of the vehicle. So anytime you start trying to make it do two different things, you're not going to do one area very well. So not only will this correct, an all-pass filter, it'll do up to 3 independent all-pass filters, and it is the only product that will do that. You can also go into the setup menu, and you can actually turn that process on and off if you want to hear the difference. This piece also accepts up to 400 watts or a 40-volt input right into the RCA, and it'll give you up to a 9-volt output. So this being what we call a smart DSP piece, or a smart line output converter, really is the epitome of restoring that signal back to its originally recorded form. So anytime you're using a factory head unit, you're putting aftermarket amplifiers in with that system, you always want to use one of these key locks. That's going to restore the signal back to its original recorded, luster and performance. And then you can go back in, you can add your own DSP to process, adjust the sound aftermarket, or you can go right into any of the Kicker key amplifiers, and it's even going to do that much, much better. So great little piece. And there's one other really cool feature that we built into this, and you start talking about test equipment. There's no need for test equipment. One of the main problems with some of the newer vehicles with the multi-channel audio systems is you don't know what the frequency is coming out of the speaker leads without hooking it up to an RTA. Now, you have to have an RTA. You can actually tap into the speaker outputs. You cannot use a microphone for this, because a microphone is only going to pick up the frequency response of that speaker. You can send 20 to 20K into a tweeter, and you're only going to hear like from 5 to 20K, really low volume. Well, this is going to allow you to measure the frequency response coming right out of the speaker leads. So when you first power this piece up, there are actually 3 LEDs on here. They have a low frequency indicator, which is 20 to 200 hertz, a mid frequency indicator, which is 200 to 2K, and a high frequency indicator from 2K to 20K. So it's basically got a 3-band RTA built right into it. Now, the LEDs are set on a threshold. So as you start playing pink noise, if all the frequencies are equal, eventually when you start turning the input level up, all 3 LEDs should come on at about the same time. That's going to tell you have a full range signal. If one of the LEDs comes on quite a bit, sooner than the others, that's telling you there's a lot more of that frequency. And this piece has 3 setup files you need to run through. First of all, as we mentioned, you need to run the gain setup, because that's absolutely crucial. Next thing, it's going to look for noise floor, which is going to take out that static in the background. So it's going to compensate for that. And the third and final test is the full sweep that goes through and really corrects the frequency response, the output level, and does the time alignment or all pass filters. And that sounds really complicated, but once you watch this next video, you're going to see it's really pretty easy just by downloading the files and following the instructions. So Ernie, I'm going to trust you to hit it with the next video. So the new Kicker key lock, what is it? It is awesome. Why do you need it? Well, you need it because you really like your car, but your audio system, not so much. You want it to sound better. But you've got to keep that factory radio for all the controls that it offers to the rest of the vehicle. That's where the Kicker key lock comes in. It's going to restore that audio signal back to the way the recording engineers recorded it. It's going to restore the bass response, the clarity, and the equalization, so you can add any aftermarket equipment to make it sound better. You can add speakers, subwoofers, amplifiers, whatever your heart desires. That's why you need the new Kicker key lock. Go out, pick up one of the Kicker key locks, and watch the rest of this video on how to set it up and tune it. One of the cool things that you can use the key lock for is to evaluate the frequencies that are present on the input to the key lock. We call this auto frequency detect. It basically works like a 3-band RTA. The first LED will indicate low frequencies from 20 to 200 hertz. The middle LED, as you saw just come on, will detect frequencies from 200 to 2 kilohertz. And the third LED, or the high frequency indicator, will indicate frequencies from 2 kilohertz to 20 kilohertz. So what we'll want to do is we'll want to turn on our source unit with all the tone controls set flat and the listening position centered if you have those type of adjustments. Play paint noise at a moderate volume level, about mid-volume level. Then we'll begin to turn the input level of the key lock up until we see the LEDs begin to illuminate. So if you notice, the mid and high frequency LEDs illuminated, which is telling me that I have a mid and high frequency output, I've got less low frequencies in the signal. As I continue to turn the input level up, you notice I had to turn it quite a ways before the low LED showed frequency. That means I've got an unacceptable signal for using for a subwoofer. It only has a mid and high frequency output. Therefore, I would want to look for a different source of input if I was going to connect a subwoofer or if I was looking for a full range output. Now let's test another signal. Begin turning the input up. Now you notice the low and the mid LED illuminated. That means I have a low pass crossover on this output. Therefore, this signal is not going to be acceptable for a full range output, such as the output to a set of door speakers. It's only going to be acceptable for mid bass or for a subwoofer. I can continue to turn the input up even further. Eventually, that high frequency LED comes on, which means I do have some high frequencies, just not nearly as much as I do the low and the mid frequencies. Let's test a third signal input. Begin turning the level input up on the key lock. And if you notice, all 3 LEDs came on at approximately the same time. This means I have a full range signal, and it is useful for any type of output I'm looking for. This is the signal I'm going to want to use for a full range output. So now we want to do gain match with the key lock. I'm going to download the gain match track from the support tab at kicker.com. I'm going to play at the source unit at approximately 3/4 volume level. This is going to be the maximum unclipped output from our source unit, and this is where we're going to set the input gain on the key lock. This is the most important step. You must make sure you do not clip the input on the key lock, or your results will not be satisfactory. To put the key lock into gain match mode, I'm going to push and hold the key button on the right side of the key lock and hold it until you see the LEDs scroll to the right, and then they'll scroll to the left. Let up on the key button, and you'll see the first LED is illuminated. That means I'm now in gain match mode. With that source unit turned up to approximately 3/4 volume, I'm going to start turning up the level of the input until I see LEDs 3 and 4 illuminate. This means I have clipping on the left channel and the right channel, and I need to turn the input source down. Turning this slowly, you notice the LEDs will shut off. This means I'm no longer clipping the inputs to the left or right channels. We'll want to let this sit for about 10 seconds to make sure as that sweep goes higher and lower in frequency, it does not clip either the left or the right inputs. Now that we have the input level properly matched to the source unit, we're going to begin the setup process. Play the noise floor track on your source unit with the volume still remaining at 3/4 output. Make sure the noise floor track is playing before you begin the next process. You will simply press the key button one time, and you'll notice the number 1 LED will begin to flash. That tells me it's detecting the noise floor in your system. Once the LED 2 begins to flash, now you're ready for the next step. Immediately press the next track, which is going to be full test. You'll see the LED 2 come on solid, and then you'll wait for anywhere from 3 to 8 minutes for it to do its evaluation. The LED 2, 3, and 4 will light up sequentially to tell you as it's finished each of the processes. Now it's calculating and correcting the frequency response. It's now done. By pressing the key button one more time, we exit the setup mode, and if you notice, all 4 LEDs are lit. The right LED, number 4, is telling me that the processing is turned on. The other 3 LEDs, the low, mid, and high frequency indicators, are telling me we have a complete usable full range signal. If we want to hear the difference between the corrected and uncorrected signal, we can simply press the key button on and off to hear the difference. Now that you have the key lock installed and tuned correctly, all that's left to do is go out and listen to your music. If you haven't picked one up yet, now you know why you need one, because if you're going to keep that factory radio and upgrade the rest of the audio system, you have to have the Kicker key lock to restore that signal. So by watching the video, you can see the setup process is not actually too bad with the key lock. There are a couple steps in there and you need to follow the instructions, right to the letter, but it's really going to fix that signal. And even if you're using the key 200.4, the key 500.1, that's really going to, set that up so you've got that really, really, great signal to start with. There's a lot of different system combinations you can use. And as I mentioned with the key 200.4, you can run it with 4 channels, front, rear, left and right. And when it does that, just remember, when you're in the 4-channel mode, it's going to attenuate the high frequencies in the rear speakers because it wants to pull your image forward. Now, when you use it in the biamp mode, it's only going to work with the front speakers, but a great application like I use in one of my vehicles, I've got 6x9s in the doors and the 3.5s in the dash, and actually that's the Dodge Journey you saw in the picture. That's going to bring that sound stage up top of the dash because it's going to run all the dash speakers from 320 and up. Now, the question is, what if I don't have any upper speakers? I've just got, mids down on the doors on my factory system. Well, by using the key 200.4 in the biamp mode and our KSS 2504, which are what we call the snowman pods, which use a 2.5-inch mid-range and a 3/4-inch silk dome tweeter, you can now mount those pods up on the pillars, and now you can have that absolutely incredible soundstage and imaging that you're looking for without a really high-dollar system. So it really does work to add these products. You can mix and match with OEM and aftermarket or all aftermarket equipment to once again restore that signal, and it takes all the guesswork out of DSP. It takes all the lengthy tuning time out of it, and it really does get the car out into the field and back to the customer so he can enjoy his music as soon as possible. It's really impressive. So with that, we're going to go ahead and bring Ben and Dave back in, and thank you guys for listening to our little presentation on the key products. I think once you try these products, you're going to fall in love with them as much as we do.
John, I must say, this isn't your first day on the job, is it?
Well, it's actually my second, but
it's just you have such a great way of explaining things. It's so easy to follow along, and the way that you've explained it in this presentation, step by step, really anybody could watch this back and literally follow it step by step. And I was a little bit concerned about what that key lock did, but that last video just cleared it all up. However,
yeah, it's really great. And once again, I love to go in and tune vehicles, but we just know that it's just not always practical. And, with DSP, you can really, really mess up a signal too. So it just makes it so much easier for your average DIY guy or, the installer that's out there that just wants to give the customer the absolute best result in a really short amount of time.
So I'm going to ask a couple questions here on behalf of dealers. And you know what? You mentioned that this is going to give you an optical tune, and this is a tune obviously developed from the mega brains at Kicker who've been doing this forever. Can you talk to us a little bit about how that tune was developed and the kind of the behind the scenes of that process?
Well, if you start following some of the competition bodies like IASC, USAC, back in the old days, they were looking for, a pretty much flat frequency response. The only problem is that's not exciting. And one of the things I always tell people is like, here at Kicker, we don't sell car audio products. Did you know that? We don't sell car audio. What do we sell? We sell emotion. We sell excitement. Car audio is just the product that brings that, up to the table and brings it to life. It's the medium that delivers the emotion, to the end user. So we found out that, a little bit of a slight bump in the lower region and a slight bump in the upper frequency region, and kind of what we call the Kicker EQ curve, really gives that flat response without going too heavy into the bass response or too bright in the high frequency response. It's just a good, nice intro. It's almost like a loudness control, but it's done to the kicker quality of standards. Now, with the Key 200.4, you have the option of shutting that off and returning back to an absolute flat, level playing field if you want to do that. But I don't think I've seen that used very often. Most people like that EQ curve that we've installed into that, automatically for you.
That's kind of like a one-way, voyage. You once you go that way, you really don't want to go back.
Yeah, I mean, and it's all about the excitement. And who wants to spend a whole lot of money on something and not enjoy it? I'm certainly not me.
And this is a great segue to my next point. Dave brought it up in the beginning when I asked him the question, like, why do dealers need to tune into this one? And I want to really focus in on this. There's a ton of dealers out there that have not dabbled into DSP yet. Whether we want to admit it or not, this is 100% true. I know this for a fact. Having said that, I think there's a couple different reasons why they haven't. One, maybe they've dabbled into some software from other brands and that kind of intimidated them. That could be one scenario. Another scenario could be, well, if I'm going to do something, I've always done it all the way and done it right. Well, that would involve me, getting the RTA, for example, and getting training on that and having a master technician be able to do that. So that's a whole investment capital issue. This is a system that doesn't require that type of equipment. Could this just be the perfect system for dealers to get into it, to get their feet wet?
Well, we'd sure like to think so. And, the dealers that have tried it, that have embraced it, I mean, they really, really are happy with it. And some of them, don't feel the need to go back in and put, the big, fully adjustable DSP crossovers. Because as we all know, in this day and age, it's really tough to charge a customer, 6 to 8 hours of just tuning. A consumer doesn't see the value in that. Well, we're going to do all that for you and take the guesswork out, and we're going to give that customer, probably 90% of the same sound you can get with one of those really expensive, complicated processors with little to no training or education on DSP. But, you mentioned something before, and you're talking about how, there's a lot of dealers out there that have never dealt with DSP. As I mentioned earlier, almost every single OEM system, in fact, I think every single OEM system right now has DSP. So you've messed with it, you just didn't know it, and it isn't necessarily the best way to do it.
No, absolutely. And Dave, do you have anything to echo on this point? I mean, you talk to dealers every day. So there must be a very firm position in the market for what Kicker has to offer here.
Oh, 100%. And, just off of what John just said, I have a Dodge Ram, and it has incredible amounts of bass. It doesn't have the fancy, multi-speaker system or subwoofer. But the year before, the Ram does not sound anything like mine. And the difference is DSP. DSP has made that system sound, same speakers, same source unit and everything like that. But all of a sudden, it sounds like there's a sub coming from the back. It's remarkable. People think I've done, major upgrades, and really it's a factory system in that particular vehicle. So DSP will certainly work wonders, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and you're right, Dave. In fact, in my Dodge vehicle, and you guys will find this in most of the vehicles with this Key 200, with the time alignment, one of the key areas for time alignment, believe it or not, is mid-bass between the left and right because of the distance that the sound travels and the wavelength. So by doing time alignment, especially on front speakers, it really intensifies and makes that mid-bass so much more prominent, so much more accurate and tight. In fact, a lot of times when I'm doing demos, I will shut the subwoofer off in my vehicle and just play the 6x9s and the dash speakers. And people will go, man, that's incredible. What do you have for a subwoofer? It's like, well, there's nothing playing right now. And when you bring that subwoofer in, you start bringing that volume up on the subwoofer and their eyes light up. That's just the frosting on the cake. But I've always said a system should sound incredible without a subwoofer. The subwoofer should just be that little frosting. But yes, you always want to have that subwoofer.
Amazing. Want to go back to, you started kind of mentioning, different system designs, right? You mentioned the pods, if you didn't have a spot for a tweeter, maybe. What would you recommend at this price point that would match perfect with the Key amplifiers as far as speakers are concerned, and maybe sub boxes?
Yeah, when it comes to the Key 500.1, it is 500 watts of power minimum. In fact, we're going to say that some of these things are actually doing 600 plus on the test bench. So it will very easily drive any 10, 12-inch subwoofer, sealed ported, forward firing, down firing. It'll drive a pair of 10s, a pair of 12s incredibly well. So there really is a myriad of applications that the Key 500.1 with the subwoofer will connect to. And as far as the Key 200.4, I mean, you could just install that between your factory deck and your factory speakers to maximize their performance. Then you can build upon that. Okay, that sounds great. Let's go ahead and let's add some better front speakers. Let's add some components. Let's add the 2504s. And what you do then, it's very simple. You hold the button for 10 seconds on the microphone, which deletes the whole programming and starts it from scratch. Retune it one time. After about 2 or 3 minutes, you've retuned it back to its fullest potential. So it's very easy to upgrade, from any system, from just adding just a key amplifier to adding the key amplifier with a subwoofer and then processing the signal with the key lock on the front end of that to make sure you have an absolutely incredible listening experience.
Makes a whole lot of sense to me. Now, I've saved my toughest question for the end, John. Are you ready for it?
I'm ready.
So as well as I do, and Dave knows this as well, that we have all types of audience in the dealers world, right? So there's going to be guys that are like, those nerdy, techie, advanced, if it ain't second order bandpass filters with 32 band EQ and so on and so forth, not for me. Now, what's my question? What message do you have for dealers who do have extensive experience with advanced DSP and tuning it that could pique their interest to look at this product, which is very different from what that category is?
I think that the biggest takeaway from this is the ease of installation and the time that you don't have to tie the customer's vehicle up for. I mean, you can A/B these systems that you do with the key products with some systems that are using a much more intricate, complicated DSP processor. And I think you're going to find that these are going to right up there. They're going to compare to those systems with little to no setup time and little to no, test tools or experience. So it's all about getting the customer's vehicle for the least amount of dollars that's going to sound the best in the shortest amount of time. And that's kind of where we really excel. I mean, one of the jokes I always talk about, we're kind of the asses that rock the masses. We're going to, basically hit that huge playing field. And give that customer what he wants for what he can afford and for the duration that he wants to listen to it.
If I may, John, I'd like to layer your answer with 2 more points that I've
okay. Go right ahead.
Number one, this doesn't have to be your master tech tuner guy of the shop to set up. This could be your junior. So let's think about that for a second. You might at this busy time. If you're managing your shop, right? Sure, you have those higher end customers that want the more extensive, elaborate systems. But if this is so simple to set up, you could train your, entry-level junior or, the newer, less experienced technician in your bay to be very efficient with this set system. And then you can roll these out, which makes you very profitable. The other side, look at the size of these things. You can hide them anywhere. Like, that's the other thing, space constraint. You're talking about a separate 6 to 8 channel DSP processor. Then you need a 6-channel amplifier. And then you want another monitor. Man, that's this wide. What
and it gets crazy.
You fits under a seat.
Power draw is something else you got to consider, with a lot of these factory electrical systems. And, this little guy here being so efficient. I mean, literally about every one I've ever done, I've wrapped them up with, carpet or padding and tucked them behind the dash, and they do not get hot. They're that efficient. And it's really an advantage because the less you have to take the customer's vehicle apart, the less you have to run wires and mount things in other locations, the more chance of damaging a vehicle you're going to have. Most of these new vehicles, they're made to snap together. They're not made to come apart again. So the less you take the customer's vehicle apart, the less you alter it or, molest it, so to speak, the more happy the customer is going to be because he's not going to have broken clips and rattles and squeaks and, everything's going to work just as the factory system did.
Beautiful. Let's just take a quick minute and review all this. Three products in front of you. One's the integration piece, the other the amplifier. Small footprint, big power, many different applications, handles your flattening of your signal, handles the integration into the vehicle, has the knowledge and the smart, features to be able to analyze and then put in that optimized sound that makes that soundstage just live and breathe and make it really organic. And pretty much you can throw this in any situation without an experienced tech and match to pretty much any speaker or subwoofer you want, basically.
Yep. You sold me, Ben. I'll take it. Where do I sign?
I know where you can find one. I'll send you an email on it.
Fantastic.
John, I can't thank you enough for coming in again and taking some time and for coming in from the studios, of course. And we look forward to our next session. We did learn a lot. Thank you so much.
And absolutely. And one quick thing, if guys have questions, reach out to support@kicker.com. Send us an email and we'll be happy to answer any questions on any of these products for you guys. We're always here to help.
Amazing. Thank you so much, guys. Take care, John. So, Dave, key system from Kicker. What was your main takeaway from today?
Oh man, I mean, I've got a list of stuff that so I'll make it quick. Compact amplifiers, that's high demand. Simplicity of installation, high demand. No special tools involved. Like really, we're talking wire strippers and a tuning screwdriver. Don't need
literally.
to buy
You have to say the tuning screwdriver. That's fine. Yep.
You can use a butter knife, but you're talking real simple tools. No mic, no laptop, no RTA or anything like that. Ben, there's certainly a time and place for everything, right? And if you've got a Mercedes with 22 speakers and you've got up mixers and all that other type of stuff, and this is not the product for you, but that guy probably has a budget for you to go with more powerful amplifiers, higher quality aftermarket speakers, bigger subs, bigger power overall. But if you've got the average Joe coming in with a simpler system that's looking to get the best sound quality, and he doesn't have the budget for you to charge him 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 hours to do the tuning, but you want to knock his socks off, this is the product to do it with. And what I love about it is, I happened to hear the first demo of it at CES a few years ago, and you can toggle on and off.
I was just gonna say that I should have brought that up with John there. What a great, inexpensive way to put into a demo vehicle.
Oh my God!
To show the difference between with DSP and without. I mean, it's a toggle.
It's not a subtle difference. It's night and day. First time I heard it, I swear that the difference between the system that I was hearing and afterwards was, a $2,500 investment. And really all that was is factory speakers, a key amplifier. Yeah, it was factory. It was in the Fiat at the time. They had factory speakers in it and a subwoofer. And I'm telling you, it sounded like somebody had dropped, $2,500 into that system to be able to get that type of sound. It was remarkable. So, being able to demo that to the customer when he picks up his car and say, hey, let me let you listen to what you've invested into.
Here's what you had.
His sock.
What you had. Now here's what you have. And
right.
That's winner all around.
And last but not least, the key lock. Oh my gosh. I don't know how many times I've been to places in the past where, somebody didn't have the tools, but because of pride or whatever the case may be, and they've been doing, this job for 29 years and all that type of stuff, they seem to think that they can hear the frequencies that channel that amplifier is putting out. So they know that that's mid-range only, there's no tweeter and so on and so on. And you can't do that. I mean, let's be honest. The only way to figure that out is with an RTA, but man, with the key lock piece, and
no more guessing.
All pass filters. I mean, the only way to fix that is with a DSP or an amplifier with DSP. So that piece is like the most unique piece in the industry, and it's so affordable, and it's it should be a staple for anybody that's got a system that they suspect has got
that's a piece that should just be in stock on the wall.
Oh, 100%.
Whether you're installing Kicker key or just anything, this is just a great tool to make sure you're getting the right signal from the vehicle factory.
Awesome lineup overall. I hope guys, really have seen that today.
Well, I'll tell you what, if they want more information, they can always go to the website. It's kicker.com. Of course, that's an ever evolving landscape because they got so many products going on, but go ahead and check out the key technology stuff and you'll find out everything that John talked about today. But more importantly, if you're in Canada and you're like, this guy Dave, he might have something here, give him a call, gemsen.com. I'm sure he'll hook you up, try it out, and have a feeling you won't be disappointed.
We have a great team, and everybody's there to help you. Give us
There
a
you
ring.
go. All right. Dave, that's another good one, man. Thanks for coming in today.
Thanks, Ben, and thanks, John, and everybody at Kicker. Appreciate it.
I'll see you on the next one.
Take care.
All right. Well, that was interesting. That was all about key technologies. I hope you stayed and watched the entire thing. I mean, literally one session, and I feel I could easily go and put that into any vehicle. And if I can't, I'll just go back to that part where he does the setup with the key lock, and bada bing, bada boom, learn how to read a couple LEDs and push a button, and away you go. That's it. All right. We're still in the DSP sessions, and we want you to stay locked into the DSP sessions because we're not done yet. Every single brand is being presented here this month during the DSP sessions, right through till July 28th. So keep it locked here on CMA Networks. And while you're there, make sure you check out our website, cmanetworks.com. Literally hundreds of videos just like this can be found on our website. Look for videos by brand, by category, or check out your favorite trainer like my man, John Myers. He's got his own profile on there. And check out all the great videos we've done with Kicker. That's it for this one. Woo, that was a good one. This is CMA Workshop presented by SiriusXM. I'm your host, Ben Will. Till next time, we connect.
I mean, yeah, let's talk about
Stop
today.
it.
Today we're gonna go
Yo.
topics.
Roll it down.
I am.
You don't need a car to listen to Sirius XM. You can listen anywhere. You know that, right?
What? Kevin Hart's Laugh Out Loud Radio.
Kevin, you could use your phone.
What?
What?
Alexa, play Kevin Hart's Laugh Out Loud Radio on Sirius XM.
What?
This is how I know you're getting old. I guess that was it.
What?